everybody, and welcome back. Today we are going to get the doors in and show the proper way to install a door. And I'm going to finish the last. What do I have? One more window to put in here. With that door, we always have, put the header up tight like we talked about. Or if it's a 9-foot wall, we'll have 81.5 trimmers, which gives you an 83-inch opening. Some doors can get up that high, and doors are weird. They're always a little bit different, the exterior ones. And if possible, and it is possible on this door, it's always nice to get something underneath the door to lift it up. Even though on this door, there's probably a good 1.25 inches of up here before the actual sill. I still want to put something underneath there because this isn't too bad because we're just going to be putting in like a fake wood floor, so I'm talking 3/8. Even with the backer underneath it, probably 3/8 is all. But if you put a shaggy rug in front of it or something, or if you were to do tile, you would get higher. Carpeting, whatever, it's nice to get it off and up a little bit, even for moisture anywhere. It's always better to have your door up a little bit. So anyway, this one here, I have room to do whatever. I want to get at least probably a 1/2 inch underneath here. I'm probably going to cut a piece of 1/2 inch green treated. I don't need green treated underneath there, but I have green. I'd rather have regular plywood underneath here than the OSB. And I mean, if it's done correctly, it doesn't matter. It's just safer that way. So I'm going to put a piece of 1/2 inch underneath here. I'm also going to have to further the top down a little bit because I think the door was 81.25 and I've got 83. So we'll further this up a little bit, further the top down a little bit, and then we'll get the door to fit in here. Well, when I'm cutting a board for underneath the door here, our plate is 5.5 inches, but we have 1/2 inch sheathing on here. So I'm going to cut my board that goes underneath to be 6 inches so it's out flush with the sheathing. Because you know how these have a metal bottom sill on the door, and you'll see a lot of times where they get bent down because people don't put anything underneath it. I'll put that on there for now, and then when the finished deck goes on here, it won't be flush. I always drop the deck or porch down if possible, unless you're doing, if you're doing something that's matching with something existing, you're limited. I like to drop it down so I have 3 inches between the bottom of the door and the deck in the finish, so that when snow comes on here, it rains, everything is dropped down. Nothing is trying to get underneath that door. So we're going to come out 6, but then once we get the finished deck on here, I'll cut a solid board that'll go up underneath that, because the door is still going to stick out past a little bit. It'll go underneath the whole thing so there's good support. And nothing worse than putting in a new door. Even during construction, you put in the door and there's nothing underneath there. I'll come out and put a 2x6 or something underneath and screw it in so that there's support there. Before the people even move into their house, their bottom sill is bent, and that's just not good. So here's our board that's going to go underneath. But what we will do underneath here is get a good couple beads of caulking before we put this down. It's just one more place for air to infiltrate into the house. And get one right on this edge, just making sure that water splashing up doesn't ever get underneath there. I mean, if the house was sided correctly and everything was done correctly, it won't, but that doesn't always happen. This is just some color match stuff that I had from a job. I like to get these corners good too on all of this, just keep all that air from coming in here. Well, looking at my sill here, it is almost perfectly level, which if you guys did not watch the rest of this series, I spent a painful amount of time making sure that everything was perfect from the start so you don't have to deal with stuff later on where it's off. A lot of times if you're doing a really old house, and they used to like cut the actual board underneath the door, which actually ended up being like the door sill was kind of built into the house. Everything was built separately, and then the door was put in, and they're usually a heavy wooden door. And if the bottom was off somewhat, it didn't matter because they cut the door to fit, and then they would put the weather strip or whatever it is would be a separate piece, where now everything comes as a pre-hung, everything is put together. But if I'm replacing a door, I'm putting in a pre-hung where there was originally like a custom built in a way, even though they're about the same size usually. This can be off. I mean, I've seen it off where this was off 1/2 inch. And two ways to do that. I mean, one thing, just like with windows, it's not so important that everything is level for it to work, but it's important that it's square. If this was off some, you could actually put the door in, and if say that this was higher, you could make that door work just fine having it here if you've got enough room to square the door shoving it this way. So when you're looking at the space, you might have a small space down here between the door and the trimmer, and up there you might have a bigger space, and it would be the opposite here. You would square the door in. Much easier when everything is level. And also if you have, like this instance, we have a door here and right next to it a window. Well, you're going to be able to see on the outside if that door is at an angle. So then if you're going to level this, it would be better to have a board under the door like this, and instead of, I've seen people just lift up the door here and put a shims under the door. Well, that's fine, that will work, but at the same time, you've got a lot of stuff that you've got to fill in so you don't get any air infiltration. What I would do in that case is I would take this, before this was on, I would lift this back up, I would put my shims underneath here, get this board under the sill really level, and then once I've got it level with my shims that are holding it up, I will then take this off because it's not nailed, and I will fill this in with construction glue. Same stuff usually that we put underneath the plywood. And then put this back down so that when everything dries and hardens, I don't have a strip here and a strip here and somewhere where it can sag. Everything is solid. I see here that on my edges, my cut with my Sawzall was not as straight as my cut with the plywood. I'm going to go ahead and fill that with caulking so I don't have any air infiltration coming down through there. Again, if the outside of your house was done correctly, in the end there wouldn't be, but it's still just get everything perfect right from the start so you don't have any cold air blowing in by your door or your windows. And then what we're going to do is, just like with the window, we need to put the flex wrap down here. And for those of you that did not watch the window video, because all you want to know about is how to install a door, we need to put this pan underneath here so that if any water were to run down the side of the door or whatever, or somehow get behind it, when it gets down here, it has something to hit. On a window, we actually put this up so it can run out. We do not on a door. But we need to get this down there so that anything that does hit here doesn't go into the corners and rot stuff out. It has, it can go this way or whatever. Since this is new construction, we already have a house wrap on here. These doors have a brick mold, so there's wood right here. Some of your doors are going to come with a nailing flange like the windows have. Why didn't I use that kind of door? They're more than double the price. So a little maintenance painting the wood part here is not going to be that big of a deal. You know, if you've got an open checkbook, you know, there's better ways to do things as far as buying your windows and stuff, but you kind of have to do what you can afford. If this was, since this is brick mold, there's not going to be the window wrap or whatever you want to call it going over the flange. All it's going to be is caulking here, and then we're going to go ahead and put our brick mold against it. Some people will nail into it. I like to screw into it. It makes a little bit of a bigger hole, but you can just put caulking over that before you paint it. And if I ever need to remove the door, it comes out easier. There's no way that I'm going to get a hammer mark on my brick mold. I just like using the screws. It really sucks everything in tight. But if this was old construction, no house wrap on here, I would go ahead and put a piece of the 4-inch house wrap on here before I put my door, so my brick mold hits against this, and then at a later date, if we're going to re-side it, then you would then put house wrap on, and the house wrap can go over the top of this, and you can tape it. But we don't have to worry about that on this one, because it's new construction and we already have the house wrap. You just got to constantly, just like when you're doing shingles on a roof, you got to just constantly pretend you're water, and you don't want to get into the house, and just use common sense to figure it out. Now that I have my flex wrap down and we've created this waterproof pan down here, we are going to put caulking underneath the door. I like to do 2 or 3 lines of it, depending. This is a 2x6 wall, so I have more room. But you've got to look at the bottom of your door. On this door here, we're fairly lucky. This is pretty flat, but not all doors are. Sometimes, like look up here, like it's gonna hit, this part here is what's gonna hit against my sheathing. So everything from here is inside the house. All of this will be hitting on my piece of plywood that I just put underneath the door. It does you no good if you have a bead of caulking right here. There's nothing there. So you need to make sure that you get your bead of caulking on this part here. And then you see this line right here, that's in about 3/8 of an inch, probably to center. I'm going to run a bead right here too so it hits. We don't want any water coming in under this door, slipping in here. And I mean, we have the pan underneath there, that's all good, but the pan isn't there, so you can do something not as good in the future. You have to do it right the first time. So I'm going to want 2 beads of caulking back here, and then I'm going to try to get 1 right here. But some of these doors you get, and you'll have these openings, and there'll be 1 over here. And then if you put your bead of caulking and don't look, you did absolutely nothing. Before we do that though, like we talked about before, the door is shorter than the opening, and you don't know that until your doors show up. Windows are a lot easier, you get better rough opening details. I want an 82-inch opening. That's going to give me 3/8 of an inch extra to get some insulation in there. I have almost 83 inches now. I could almost make that work, but we're going to do it. Yeah, I want 82. So anyway, we're going to put another 1/2 inch piece up here on the top to fur that down. And again, we're going to go from here all the way to the outside of the sheathing. It's just stronger than when I screw in here, you're not missing and going into a void or anything, or it's back a ways. And you want to try to remember to do this first, because I can't tell you how many times you get all set up with your door, you've got your beads of caulking on the bottom, you ran your caulking up, over, and down, and you come and you set the door in here, And then above the brick mold or above the flange, there's daylight, or you can look up here and see every one of the holes that you were supposed to nail in to the flange, and you forgot to fur it down. Then you got to pull the door out, which is now full of caulking, you know, and then try to do this, and then remember not to step on the sill, which you have caulking on. So it's just try to remember to do this first. Now that that's done, I am going to double check my work again because I know I want 82 inches for the door. I now have 82 and 3/8, so I have plenty of space up there. I could almost put a second ½ inch, but I'm not going to worry about it because we have brick mold and that's going to totally cover all of this up. I don't have to worry about any of those holes. And you don't have to, you know, with that I have the house wrap, which I guess we should talk about that because in case you are just watching this to know how to do the door, you always take your house wrap and run it through here and then cut it and wrap it along the inside of your trimmer. This just keeps everything nice and more watertight. It was the same on the top. I could have actually pulled that back, put this up, and then wrapped it around. I'm underneath a 6-foot porch here. There's just no reason for me to do any of that. So that's why I just did it this way. And now, just like when I do the windows, we're going to put a nice bead of caulking around the whole thing, except for unlike with the window, we will be putting caulking underneath it. And just take extra care to make sure that you get a nice bead underneath your door. That one should be in about the 3/8. I'm actually going to make this nice and wide so I know I hit that little spot. This would be the first place to stop any moisture, and this is definitely where it's going to try to come in. And then I'm just going to do a couple more. On your door, always check. Some of the doors will have a plastic thing in here that kind of holds it together that you have to unscrew and pull out. This one doesn't, but it has 2 nails. It has one on the bottom and one on the top. You need to pull those nails or you won't be able to get that door open. And then you're trying to crank on it and it's going to scratch across that face. So once I get this up there, I will pull those nails and the door will be ready to throw in. You can see one of those nails right there. Got to get that pulled out. And then this one up here. I've got the door sitting here with a little spacer so it doesn't get into the caulking that's against the wall. There we go, the door is free. Now that I have the door installed into the hole here, you want to get the bottom centered. Don't worry about your top at all, just look at your bottom. I've got too big of a gap here, small gap here. Take my chisel and slide that over so I get it about half and half. Makes it real nice for getting your foam when you're putting the insulation to be able to run that right down and have a gap, you know, equal on each side. That looks pretty good. Now I know that my sill is level. So I'm going to step on this to make sure I'm down into that caulking good. And I'm going to go ahead, and if you're going to nail it, you nail it. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 screws, one in each bottom. Since I know that that's good, everything else I can move after the fact. That really sucks it in nice and tight too when you use screws. Now that I have the bottom set, I can see just by the gap, we're tight here and it's open here, so it's definitely going to have to go this way. So I'm going to set it with the level and get 1 screw in here, not even all the way in, just to tack it. If you had 2 guys, you can close the door, the inside guy's running the level, and he's also watching that gap around the door. That's the most important thing, is the gap around the door. But as me being 1 person, I will just get it level, and then we'll adjust the inside and see what we need to do. See how that door wanted to close before, and now when I get it more toward level, I actually went too far and then it wants to open back up again. So if you have a door that you open that doesn't stay open, something's out of level. Well, I think that did not go in the right place. Huh? Not too bad. Now that I have the one tacked there at level, I can go ahead and shut the door. These have such a tight bottom weather seal on them, it's hard. Sometimes you might want to, this is an adjustable sill, so you can adjust it down. But I'm going to close this door, and then I want to make sure and see what my opening looks like. You can see on the bottom there we have probably a shy 1/8 inch. If I go up to the top, I have pretty much a shy 1/8 inch. That's pretty close. And then you want to look at the top. All we want to look at is this top corner and that top corner. Because in the middle, like if you look at the door here, we have almost a 1/4 inch gap, but this gets moved. You can move that back and forth, and we'll have to sight the brick mold on the outside to try to straighten all that out. And then of course you're going to be putting a shim in here and everything to hold it also. So this is adjustable, but top and bottom is fixed. And it looks pretty good. Always sight your brick mold, make sure that it's pretty straight. I mean, it should be right on. And it usually is not when you're installing the door. We want to have a screw in the top, a screw in the bottom, or a nail, whatever. One in the center, one here, one here. Sometimes you get a door and they don't want anything put in here at all, and you have to screw through here, which we will do on the, you can do some fine adjusting with these doors by manipulating what you do when you pull these short screws out and put a longer one in. You can suck it over, pull it back. That looks pretty nice. This one does not look nice. Now that I have it all screwed off and everything is tight against the sheathing out there, now my gap up here, you see that? It's tightened up some. When I shut this door, it actually hit. We don't want that. So what I'm going to do is take one screw out of the hinge, and they actually sent up on top 4 hinge screws. You're supposed to put some longer ones in here so it ties into the trimmer to hold the door. I usually don't really worry about that. I just put a regular construction screw in so it's going way in there. Otherwise, also pretty hard for people to get into your house. I gotta grab my other drill with the bigger screws. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this in. Very lightly go a little farther, because what's happening is we're nailed here. Nothing is nailed here. There's a gap. This can easily move. So even if maybe your house, the bedroom door right now hits, you can go ahead and pull your screw and adjust it. That's how when you call up a carpenter to come over and adjust my door, this is basically what's going to happen. So I'm just going to go a little bit. Let's see what happened with that. Beautiful. Looks like a professional did that one. You can see right there, now our gap looks really good, and we just barely moved it over on the other side. And you still have to be careful doing it that way. I mean, you can't fix everything by doing that. You can move it a long way, but remember, when you go that way, everything here came up. I mean, I barely had to move that. But then all of a sudden, your deadbolt or your door here isn't going to hit the hole right there, and then you're down here with the chisel trying to adjust that and making it look kind of shoddy when you have to start chiseling some of that out. So just little ones. It's most important to set it perfectly on the floor, make sure that's level. And then these little adjustments like this did nothing, but you really have to watch out. You can't move this over a ½ inch and expect that, oh wow, it's going to be just fine, because then you're going to have trouble right here. I am going to go ahead and put a shim in here so I can get this where I want it. This is a pretty good gap here, so I think we'll put in a thick side first. And I want to put this shim between these two. I don't want it right here where I'm going to be doing some work later. And now if you're nailing or screwing this, I like to pull this back and get the screw in here. So when I push that over, the screw is covered up, because I'm not going to be putting any. I don't want to be filling that hole up with caulking. That looks good. I'll probably have to do a little shim down here because it looks like it's a little snaky in there. When I put a screw in that top hinge, we wanted to move the door. I no longer want to move the door. It's right where I want it. But I do want to get a long screw in this hinge and in the bottom hinge, because all your movement on your door is there. Your weight, everything is there. So I want to get one that's going into the trimmer. So I want to then go ahead and put a shim in here so that the door doesn't move. And sometimes it's better to do these a little bit tight, because you will suck that door over if you're not. I also like to put my shims in and then go ahead and shut the door before you put your switch out the screws, because if you just move something, then you got to pull the screws, and once you pull the screws and then you're trying to screw into the same hole, it just doesn't work right. It looks fantastic. I guarantee you, if you do enough doors, you're occasionally going to get a door. It can happen with the big custom windows too, where it just will not seem like I did everything right. Why isn't this working? And those of you that are in construction that have done this know exactly what I mean. You also cannot always trust the door company. Look at these screws. This one sticks out just a little bit. This one, they put the screw in crooked and it's out. Well, when these hinge closes, it's tight, you know, pretty close to tight. So sometimes I've seen these where they're really bad, and when you shut it, it then pulls this part of the door out, and you're trying to adjust everything thinking you did everything right, and here it wasn't your it wasn't your fault, it wasn't your problem, and now you've done all those adjustments for nothing because you pull that screw and everything falls into place, and then the door is off again because you were adjusting it. I like it. If I would have remembered to get the doorknobs, which I didn't, I would put those on right now, the doorknob and the deadbolt. And I probably shouldn't even mention this because this is going to go above just, you know, standardly putting in a door. But if you get into some of the old houses, or even a house where some crappy people built it, and you put your door in, and you shut your door, and say it hits on the bottom, but the top is sticking out like a 1/4 inch. Like, why isn't it just chunk hitting right against like it's supposed to? And the reason why is because this wall isn't in line with that wall. Who knows why they did it? The older houses, they might have built the wall this far and then built the wall beyond, put a top plate in, top plate's straight, so the top hits, but the bottom is off. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. You're putting in a door, now what do I do? And you can get around that too. So if that were the case, and I shut the door, and it's hitting on the bottom, but on the top it's like a 1/4 inch away, which means the door is going like this. The actual frame is. So then what I do, let's see if it has to come out here. So what I would do with this one having brick mold is I would beat this door before I did any of the screwing or anything. This would be, can be in. I would take block and I would beat the door this way and put a 1/4 inch gap between my brick mold and my door. So this is coming in, but this didn't. And then when I shut the door, that's going to change the way the door sat, and it's going to make this side more even. I try to do it on this side because this is the hinge side. This is the whole door. And you can go the other way also, but if you have to go the other way, then you're going to want to try to adjust this side. And if you can't do that, then you can actually go behind and put shims behind here if you had to pull it out. But you know, once you put a gap here, then you're going to have to run a bead of caulking up there to hide that. But it does work to get your door to fit just perfect. I probably just did a great door tutorial and then screwed it up trying to tell you the little tricks of the trade, but some of you will understand that. Or you might think about that someday when you shut a door and it's not right, and it's like, hey, there's a way we can adjust that. Just think about the way the door works. The door is flat. The walls are what's crooked. Very seldom, and I have seen it though, do you get a warped door, especially with the metal ones, but I have had it happen. As soon as you're done installing your door, if this is new construction like this, or you're not going to be, you know, finishing it, you putting your piece under your deck, get a board underneath here right away. Even if you just have one screw to hold it. Because what's going to happen is, I can tell you right now, when it comes time to like bring sheetrock in here, I'm going to take and put a nice piece of cardboard over this so I don't scratch anything up. I'm going to be bringing that sheetrock in to bring it inside, and a piece is going to fall out of my hand. It's going to hit this corner like I was talking about before, and it's going to bend it. So get something underneath there right away so that no matter what, it's solid. With these screws that I put in, I countersunk them in. I drove them in farther, not flush at all, so I can fill these little holes with caulking, and then I'll just rub my hand over it, you know, my finger to flatten it out. And I also, when you put your nails or screws in, you don't put them in this flat part, you put it right in this part right here. You can put it right in this crack, but I like to put it right in this little angled part and keep them up from the bottom, because if you put them down here, you can crack out the brick mold. So that's kind of important. Also, when you're painting your door, get your paintbrush underneath here and paint under here. In Louisiana, I put almost the exact same door in, except for it had grids in the glass. And I did not paint underneath here. 2 years later, we don't have termites up here, but down there they do. And they get a lot of rain. And anyway, moisture from splashing off of the step got up underneath here to me this week, and termites got in here. And then termites got in here. So hopefully this wind isn't screwing this up. This got rotted. It was soft behind my paint that I had on the face of it. And then this got rotted. So I tore the whole door out and had to put in a whole entire new door, because I could have replaced this part, but this part would have really sucked. So I just put the whole new door in, and I could have eliminated all of it if I would have just got some good paint underneath here so that the moisture couldn't soak up in here and make it soft and start to rot. Also, when I come in here and I do this bead of caulking in this corner right here, see that gap right there? I'm going to put caulking in there also. I want any water that gets on here to just run out. I don't want anything running through. I really like these kind of doors because they have the lines that are inside the glass. I don't like it when you have the blinds on the outside of the glass, because every time you shut the door, even if you've got your little thing in there, it's still a click, click, click. I like these here. They really seem to work good. And I like having the full view in the front. People will say, why would you do that? People can break into your house easier. If they're going to break through the glass here, they might as well just cut a hole through the side of your house. I mean, it'd make less noise. If they're going to get in, they're going to get in. And this just gives you so much more light. And with the blinds, you can totally close it off so nobody can see in. I still have 2 more doors to put in. Might have to wait till Melissa gets home though, because I can probably get them in. They're heavy, but I can get them in there. It's how do you hold them in there long enough to get inside here to open them without them falling back out. Well, I got that last door all ready to get put in. I'm going to wait till Melissa gets home now. I mean, that one was easy. It was on the deck. This one I got in here, but I could tell I probably shouldn't have done that. They're pretty heavy. It's not too bad unless you tweak yourself the wrong way. And it's an even higher lift in the back, so just having a second person there, even just to keep it steady, will help. Okay everyone, well thanks a lot for watching. Now you know the basics on how to install an exterior door. If you happen to have a door that you're putting in that has the flanges going around it, some of the doors will have a flange on all 4 sides. Go over and watch the video I put up on how to install windows, because you would install that door basically the same way. Since we had no flanges in this video, it'd be good to watch that video also. I will see you guys on the next video.